Think we're good. All right, we're back with another episode. But first, the sponsors. I want to thank everybody at Gallo Tech for all the walls behind us, Rhino Metals for all the tables, everything you see here. Of course, I have to thank Blackwater Ammunition. It's tough being in the ammo game today. Can't survive. Can't please everyone fast enough. God bless those guys. Keep cranking out the ammo. I want to thank everyone at Galco Gun Leather. Appreciate them, everything that they do. Volquartsen Firearms. Got to thank those guys. Awesome. I love everything that Volquartsen does. Special thanks to Scott Volquartsen. Appreciate him. Appreciate the hell out of him. We got an awesome guest today. I'm pumped. This guy has my sense of humor. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to enjoy rapping with him. He's got a funny page. We're going to get into that. Everything he does is kind of cut a little bit from my playbook, but I like it. I love it a lot. We got the one and only Tyler from Tea and Cake Hunting. What's going on, brother?
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me on.
Listen, so much to get to with you. But let's start, let the listeners, let everybody kind of get to know a little bit of your story and a little bit about what you're about. So you're a veteran. You got into the hunting game, but you got into it in a unique way, and your story is super interesting because you are almost angry about everybody else that gets into hunting, and I want to get into that a little bit because that's a fun topic, and I got some thoughts I'm going to share with you. But tell everybody how you got here and how you got into this wacky business and what made you want to even get into the game.
Yeah, so as you probably, some people may already know, but I served 4 years in the Marine Corps Infantry, did a couple deployments to Afghanistan. Afterwards, I actually started working private military contracting over in Afghanistan, and from there I started kind of following some tactical gear companies. That's kind of how I got into it initially, because I started ordering stuff when I was overseas contracting and having it delivered to my house. So I was, my plans were to make a tactical company. And so a tactical gear company. And so when I got back, obviously that kind of fell through. But that's kind of what started initially, kind of making gear and kind of getting into that. And eventually just one day, I was, a police officer. One day I was just sitting in my patrol car and I was like, oh, fuck it. I'm going to make hunting gear. And the rest is history.
It's just what the world needs, another pouch company, right? But
yeah,
exactly right, like fuck it. But you get into it and it's not an easy game. Soft goods is tremendously hard. I have a lot of friends in that space, as we both know, some mutual friends. It's such a hard space to get into, and I know a little bit about your story. We chatted for a bit, and you're successful at it, and you make some pretty cool stuff. And I enjoy that grassroots approach of just kind of, designing simple things and just making them better, like not trying to reinvent the wheel. And that's a lot of what you do. It's like, let me take something that already exists, let me just make it better and put my wrinkle on it because I'm actually out there in the field doing it. And that, to me, honestly, is the most telling thing about looking at your brand and looking at what you're doing. And, when I got introduced to you, I looked at your stuff and I just love the authenticity of what you're trying to do. That's not easy to do, to put that out there and to be willing to say, I'm going to take something simple like a binocular harness and make it better. Because a lot of people say, it's been done, I'm not going to do that. But you take that approach, and I think that that's one of the most overlooked things in the soft goods space. A lot of people say, oh, well, no, I'm not going to make this because I'll make something that holds a surfboard, whatever. They kind of go off to the right. But you just want to make the stuff that's already out there 10 times better than it already is.
Exactly. I mean, that's the biggest thing is that nothing, and I tell every guy that wants to start a company or anything like that, you're not going to reinvent the wheel. You're just going to make the wheel better. So, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, any idea that's out there, because people always come to me and they'd be like, well, I got this idea for this and I got this idea for that. I mean, it's been done. It's been sown. Somebody has tried it. Somebody has done it. The biggest thing is that, you kind of, even like an example, or a bow sling, there's bow slings already on the market. We didn't invent the bow sling, but we made the bow sling better. Our bow sling easily is probably one of the most high quality, durable, long lasting bow slings in the market. And so when you look at that type of stuff, I mean, that's exactly what we're doing, like gear bags and stuff like that. You're not doing anything different. I mean, the idea is not different. It's just you're packing a lot more material and a bigger and better build into it. So you're getting more long lasting gear. And I think that's our approach that we kind of make with the industry. And I think that's why we've been so successful. So.
Yeah, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just making the wheel stronger, more durable, and getting more mileage out of it. So I totally understand and get it. And I think the mistake, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because you walk around the shows, you see it, you get it. We've talked about this. Everybody wants to jump in the game, jump in the soft goods game, whatever it is. But let's stay with soft goods. And a lot of times they're trying to be something that they're really not, or the market's not really calling for. And I think what the space that you're in, a lot of people don't realize that it's always okay to improve upon what already exists. There's always space for that. There's always room for that. And doing a bow sling and doing a bino harness or doing simple things that people use all the time. I mean, I don't know, maybe you can. There's not a hunt you go on that you don't use those tools. So there's always room for improvement on those tools. I had somebody call me the other day and they said, John, what's the best way to carry my my rangefinder or my spotting scope when I'm out in the field? And I said, honestly, I don't know. I said, I would have to ask you or defer to someone else. I said, I think you just break it down and put it in your backpack. Well, he's like, what if I want to deploy it quickly? And I was like, that's a great question. So there is call for innovation. There's space for growth. But I think sometimes people confuse it with trying to be dynamic or cute, you know what I mean? And make something that we don't really need. And we see a lot of that from a lot of companies. They try to be what we would call Gucci,
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And then you got a lot of guys too that, they're not different from any other company in the industry. They're not, they're taking maybe, a design and maybe changing a few things and, calling it good. But I mean, you've kind of got to make room for yourself and kind of create your own atmosphere and create your own customer base. And I think that's what we've been successful in. I mean, and like I said before, you've got to figure out what people want and you've got to build it and you've got to build it better. Because when people take our gear out of the box, they've had the $40, $50 bow slings. They've used those for years and years. And when they take ours out, it's a completely different. They're like, holy shit. I've never put my hands on gear like this before. That's, built with this type of materials. And, of course we manufacture in the United States, but we're not just building it for cheapness. And that's what I tell people all the time. I'm not building gear to make it affordable for, your Walmart shop or whatever. I'm making gear specifically so that it's going to last. It's going to last you for years and years and years of that use and abuse that I'm used to. Being in the military, being a hunter, being in law enforcement. I've used countless number pieces of gear from countless companies, and I can tell you the ones that last and don't last. And so, I mean, everything you'll see for us is everything's double, triple sewn. It's really built to kind of just get the shit kicked out of it.
I want to ask about durability because that's an important one. Is it not realistic to, as a customer, to expect to get the life out of something?
No, I don't think. I think that's realistic for sure. I mean, it depends how hard you hunt and stuff like that too. I mean, we've got customers that are, hunting guides that are doing 200, 300, plus hunts a year. But I think what it comes down to is that if you're sewing something, if you're making it so durable that, I mean, even if something breaks on it, it's just a minor little, piece of webbing or something like that, and you can bring it back, we fix everything. I don't think it's unrealistic to make something that's supposed to last a lifetime because you even look at the guns. Like growing up, I still shoot my grandfather's, Browning A5, that was built in the early 50s. And that thing,
tank.
I beat that thing. Yeah, it's built like a tank. And, even guns nowadays, you would look at a lot of that stuff. I mean, it's just not built like what it was back then. So I don't think it's unrealistic. I just think people are always looking for the cheaper option these days, and you get what you pay for. So if you're looking for cheap shit, that's what you're going to get. And that's what companies are doing,
Mm.
because, you know, the build them like they used to, it's just not a thing anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I've waited in the soft goods space for someone. No one's come out really screaming with that lifetime, I guess you'd say lifetime warranty, like we see with scopes and everything else. I mean, people have it, like you said, they'll replace gear, but you don't see people screaming from the rooftops that they have lifetime warranties. But I wonder if the expectation's off. You know what I'm saying, Tyler? Like, some people buy something and they don't realize, like, hey, you know, you might only get 5 years out of a bag or 10 years out of a bag, depending on, you know, what that expectation is or what you're going to use it for, because there is a realistic expectation with certain things. You know, when you buy a computer today, you might get 3, 4, maybe 5 years. You know, it's unrealistic after that. I would say, I would feel safe saying that to anybody. So I wonder, like, whether it's a bino harness or a pack or even a bow, you know, something to store your bow in, you know, what type of field abuse that should be able to put up to and what type of lifespan that will have, and whether or not, you know, the market will ever get to that place of saying 100% lifetime warranty on something. Will it ever happen?
Well, you know, I don't know, to be quite honest with you, because even though we're kind of in a niche market to where our gear is a little bit more expensive because we're building it that way to last, you know, because, you know, all of our components with, you know, you talk about 1,000 Decadura. I mean, I remember at boot camp in the Marine Corps, we had flag jackets from like the fucking 80s, you know what I mean, that were still being used because they were built that well, you know what I mean? And these days, I mean, everybody is trying to cut costs, and I mean, that's great and all for your budget shopper, but I mean, what's not realistic is people that buy those cheap things and expect them to last for years and years and years and years, forever. I don't think that's realistic. Of course, there's always going to be things that happen. You know, shit's going to break, stitching's going to come out, just like anything else. You know, stuff needs to be replaced and stuff like that, but my realistic expectation for what we kind of put in standard is that you're going to be able to use this for the rest of your life, and no matter what, it's going to be fixed or covered. And I don't think anybody's really at that level yet, but I mean, you can tell with our prices, like I said, you look at our prices, you go online, you're not, you're paying $100 for a duffel, but you're getting $100 duffel bag. You know, you're not getting a $30, $40 duffel bag. So you're getting something that was specifically built for military use for years and years of application, because you have to look at it. The government they're cheap asses, but they want stuff that's going to last over and over, that they can hand down for generations, you know, so they're not buying new plate carriers every 2 years, you know. So
I want to get you, I want to get your take, because you have strong opinions like myself. When you look out there in the soft goods space, who do you look at that's a major company, that's a bigger brand? Who do you look at and you say, I like some of what they're doing?
Special operations equipment.
SOE.
And just, you know, not everybody's a big fan of him, but I like John Wilson's approach. It's just, I mean, it's fucking hilarious. I think, you know, just the way he kind of represents himself. He's not scared of being himself. And, you know, I am, like we've said before, you know, there's a lot of companies these days, because you have to tiptoe around glass. You know, it's like you're walking on glass because you're afraid of freaking offending everybody. And unlike, you know, he's similar to that. And then, you know, there's Wild Custom Gear. He's a law enforcement guy, veteran owned too, down in San Diego. There's some small niche, you know, like mom pa type custom, you know, even for tactical gear for shooting, that are, you know, American made, using the same materials that we use. And I think they're doing it the same way, you know, just like John is, you know, trying to, you know, overbuild it so it lasts long, and, you know, kind of goes for years and years of abuse.
Where does 511 fit on your spectrum?
No comment.
So there's a lot of those big brands, and 511's been criticized for years. This is nothing new. You know, this isn't news. We're not making news here. Trust me. You know, there's a lot of companies that jump in, and I think part of the issue is they want to go mainstream, Tyler, too quick. They want to have a little bit of everything to please everybody. And we talked about this.
Them, I think there's a place for them, but I think what they do is, and why they get ridiculed and why they eat shit, so to speak, is because they go too fast to try to please everyone. They go from making gear, having a good bag, or having something that makes sense, to all of a sudden they want to come out with a pair of jeans and stretchy pants and whatever else. And I think that's part of the thing that plagues the soft goods industry, is too much, too fast, too quick, and trying to go to the middle and please everybody overnight. And that's what waters down the product SKUs and makes it start to be like what the fuck are we looking at here? Like, what are we making now? And you can get into deeper about where they're sourcing their materials and where everything comes from. And like you said, that lack of being overbuilt, so it's made to break, so to speak.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a big thing that we look at too, as far as you don't ever want to, obviously, any company that grows too big, too fast in a short amount of time, you're just not, it's horrible idea. But I think the biggest thing is that when you start getting into that line where you start thinking about, money, capitalism, and let's push out as much gear as possible, you're going to sacrifice that quality. You're going to have to cut down on material costs. You're going to be buying cheaper webbing, cheaper, knockoff, even Kadura, or be using, polyester and all this other crap, a lot of overseas material, and then manufacturing overseas. And then you're kind of getting, it's streamlined to a sense to where, okay, you're going after, maybe your weekend shooter, or the guy that maybe goes out every once in a while. He wants to look cool with a couple pouches. It's fine and dandy. But for the guys that are, like on SWAT teams or on, special operations teams and stuff like that, they're looking at that shit and they're like, this is junk.
Right.
This doesn't work for me. And so I think for in that case, I mean, that's where you have to realize where you're going to be within the industry. If you're going to, try to cut corners and be that cheap ass that uses cheap materials and underbuild things and just try to get rich, I think that's it's oversaturated in the market. And I think there's some companies that are already established doing that and are pretty mainstream with making a ton of shit. And I think if you're going to be different, you want to go towards those people that actually use the gear a lot, like what we do. We're going after that hunter that's they're in the Alaskan backcountry. I mean, they're using and abusing gear. A lot of guys will be like, well, why do I need a $140 bino harness? But I mean, if you're shooting one deer every 2-3 years, then you probably don't need it. It's just like shooting. You got guys shit out of that gear.
Right.
They need stuff that's going to last, that's going to be functional and good working. So that's one of those things to where you have to figure out. I mean, there's so many soft good companies out there, and I think the tactical industry too is, I guess you could say, oversaturated. But I think there's always room in the industry if you just find your own niche, if you know how to attack the right customers and listen to what they want. I think we made that mistake of, building gear here and there that people don't really want, it like what we think is a good idea, and it just doesn't fucking work. It doesn't work. I mean, I think focus on, especially when you're 5 years in, focus on 5 or 6 products that you can really clamp down on. You can advertise them, and you can just sell the shit out of them. And I think that's why we've been so successful. So,
no, that's. I mean, look, man, that's perfectly said. I can't put it any better. You touched on something that I think is important to come back to. It's kind of explaining to people where it fits, right? Like, you understand the term purpose-driven. You understand, the term mission-specific. You understand those terms. And I think all you guys that have, whether it's operational experience, people that have law enforcement experience, people that have taken a significant amount of trainings, understand those terms. And I say formal trainings, that's a term I use, been formally trained, they understand those terms. The regular person doesn't understand those terms, and why they're important is because when you're selecting gear or you're in the process of selecting gear, somebody will ask the quintessential tabletop question. You've heard it 100 times. Hey man, I want to go buy a scope. What should I buy? And you're like, Huh? It's like the most loaded question you could ever ask anybody. It's like, well, what are you using it for? How far do you want to go? There's a big difference between Swarovski glass or Schmidt and Bender glass and going and buying, a Chris Mark or, something else, or a Bushnell. There's a huge difference. I mean, it all depends on what you're using it for, and it's the same in soft goods. And I think a lot of people make that mistake. They say, I need a pair of pants. I'm a 36-30, right? I'm going to just go buy a pair of pants. Well, what are you using them for? And I think that's one of the things, Tyler, that soft goods companies, especially early on, make the mistake of not explaining to their customers enough. Like, you do a good job of it through your social media and everything else. You're like, my gear is not for everybody. And I think some people don't understand. Like you brought up, if you want to just go out with your buddies and look cool, yeah, you can buy some crazy camo and some sick kit for, a couple $100 and you're good to go. But if you want to do it right, you're going to go out and spend thousands. And there's a big difference. How do you lay it out to people? Give me your PC answer, because I've seen your social media and with the other answers, but like, give me your PC answer for how you explain to people when they're selecting gear, that real difference in not just quality, but just in, hey, what are you using this for?
Exactly. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing that I tell people too. I said, because I'll compare it. I said, if you want, some cheaper, a cheaper vinyl harness for $50, $60, there's shit out in the market. If you don't want to buy from me, that's completely fine. This is what I'm doing. I don't worry about what other companies are doing. I'm worried about what I'm doing. And, I think I explained it to people in this sense too, is that, if you're even going hunting even 2-3 times a year and you break that harness even twice or 3 times, let's say you go through, the cheaper gear we've all used that, you break and stuff like that. By the time it's all said and done, if you were to buy 3 of those harnesses that break, you're already spending more money than if you were to just buy one from us and then it lasts forever. And so I tell guys too, I'm like, it depends on what type of hunting you're doing, because if you're crawling through cactus, if you're, knocking down brush in the backcountry and stuff like that, you're going to want something that is going to stand up to that use and abuse. And so, I mean, it really depends, because we've got, guys, of course, that, want to buy from us because we are USA made with USA materials and USA manufactured. We got guys that, they're not doing that hard of hunting. They're sitting in a tree stand. So, I mean, do they specifically probably need that vinyl harness? No, but they still support us because they want a high quality. It's just those guys that, you'd rather buy a, high quality, high dollar shotgun than something that's cheap that's going to jam on you all the time. So, I mean, it's one of those things to where, our customer base is kind of that working class guy that appreciates the, made in America, the USA source materials, the built to last. I mean, that's kind of, we're not really, like I said, targeting budget hunters, and we don't pretend to be targeting budget hunters. I mean, because a lot of people give a shit. They're like, well, you're not gonna be like a huge company targeting all these people. We're not going to. And I completely understand that. We're not going to be a $100 million company or 200 or whatever, like some of these big mainstream companies. We're never going to be there, because most of those companies, they manufacture overseas. They use the cheaper materials. They've built their reputation, and then they kind of downgrade and cut their costs. And we're never going to do that. So, I mean, it's one of those things to where, even like goat hunting, I was out speed goat hunting just a couple days ago, and, I spent almost $200 on a pair of pants.
Right.
And I'm low crawling in those pants and everything else like that. If I were to, buy a $40 pair of pants, those things would have been ripped to fucking hell through all the rocks, cactus, and everything else I was crawling through. So, I mean, it really depends on how hard, and I'm a Marine, I'm a dumb Marine. So, of course, I'm just fucking horrible on gear and just horrible on anything I own. I've got I buy a brand new truck and it's just, it goes to shit within a year, because I'm hard on stuff. And so, like, I understand that I'm going to spend a little bit more money because I'm hard on my belongings. So the cheaper stuff, even if I'm not hunting that hard with it, I'm still beating the piss out of it, throwing it around and all that stuff. So, I mean, guys have to realize, and it's usually the guys that purchase from us because they've gone with the cheaper option. They've gone that route, and it's burned them.
Yeah. No,
and, they've had buckles break. They've had strappings break mid-hunt, 10 miles in the backcountry.
And I bring it up because you've done a lot of posts and you do a lot of stuff where you'll explain this to people, and I think this is rare, right? You'll say stuff like, could we make a $25 belt? Could we do this? Could we do that? And I think that's a little bit lost. I think people don't explain that enough, and this comes back to my last question. Companies as a whole don't do a great job explaining where they fit in the spectrum. You're not designing for the budget hunter. You're not trying to create something or fill a void in the, hey, I just want to look the part space. You're trying to fill a void in the, I want to build really quality gear that people want to spend money on and maybe only spend it once or twice in a lifetime that's going to last them. And I actually respect that you do that. I think that you put it out there like, look, we get a lot of people that message us because I know the messages you probably get. Hey, man, I really want to buy this, but wow, like this is like a $90 item or whatever. Like that's crazy. And you're like, well, we don't make it for someone that wants to spend $8. Go to Marshall's or something. Go wherever. I don't even know if Marshall's still exists. But you do a good job explaining that.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing too, is that because when I'm designing gear, I'm not thinking of cost in mind. I'm thinking about durability. I'm thinking about functionality. I'm thinking about, everything else besides cost. And I think a lot of companies these days, that's where their mind goes is how can I make it the cheapest to where I don't think like that. I think, how can I make it the best? How can I make, now you look, and for example, our $90 belt. Now, a lot of guys, they're not going to spend $90 on a fucking belt. There's a lot, they're going to go to whatever, buy their $30, $25, $30 belt. And that's cool, man. People will give me shit. They go, well, I'm not, of course we get the shit. Well, you're ripping people off and stuff. I'm like, well, no, I'm not. If you actually see what we're doing here, you kind of understand it. And the guys that have bought a lot of gear and have wore a lot of gear and wore a lot of belts, they get it. And those are the people that are buying shit from us. But the guys that, they've only worn they've only wore a couple cheap leather belts in their life, of course they're not going to fucking get it. You know what I mean? Because they haven't run 10, 15, 20 different belts and they don't know what they're looking for. So, I mean, for us, I'm one of those guys to where I'm going to build it the best that I possibly can. And whatever the price is whatever the price
Figure it out later.
And figure it out later. And the thing is that I've never had one person return a piece of gear because they said it was not worth what they spent on it. Not one person. I mean, our return rate is pretty damn low. Some guys get it and they're like, I don't like this and I don't like that. And that's just, that fucking is what it is. You don't get butthurt about that. You just, here's your return, here's your money back. And you move on, and I'll sell that belt, 2 days later or whatever, or auction it off or whatever. And so for me, I'm going to build it the best I possibly can. And I think if more companies understand, there's a lot of people that want quality goods and they're willing to pay the price for it.
Of course.
And so that's kind of what we've tapped into. And like I've said, we've been successful with it. We've got guys that, I've got special forces guys that run our belts that have said, I've ran every type of fucking belt on the planet and nothing compares to this. It was worth $90, and then some people are just, they're not going to ever get it. And that's okay. It is what it is. So you just got to freaking continue on.
You just got to keep doing what's going to make you happy and make the business move forward. And I think the worst thing you can do in the early stages of a business, especially a successful business, is start to question what's motivating you too much. You have to stay on the path of quality if quality is your motivation. And veering off from that too much to listen to people that say, hey, you should source this, hey, you should source that, or you should do it this way or do it that way, can be a death knell, because that's what brought you into it in the first place, was to create quality gear. And on that same space, you're critical of something that I have some things to say about, which is influencers in the hunting game. Not so much in the hunting game, just across the board, the way influencers are structured and everything else, especially as it pertains to social media. As you know, and you've probably maybe listened to episodes, but you know my thoughts. I think whether it's the hunting industry or tactical industry, they're very stuck on the tit of Instagram and the tit of, it being like, if we get this gear in this person's hands, it's going to make or break us. And you've been critical, saying hunters aren't, influencer hunters aren't in it for the conservation, or they're not in for this or that. And I don't disagree with some of your opinions. I think, some people don't fully understand why we're here. I'm a big believer that if it makes money, it makes sense, but there also has to be something that drives and motivates the person. It's okay to make a business out of what you do and what you love, but there has to be structure, there has to be parameters, and there has to be some level of understanding what the marketplace is. And I do think in the hunting space, it's insane because I get to watch it from the outside because I'm in the tactical space. So I have the advantage of having the popcorn and just watch it. But I get, I see it all the time. Oh, this dude's not legit. He goes on guided tours. What's your take on the influencer hunting space and what it's become? I mean, is it totally fucked, or where does it stand in your eyes?
The biggest thing is that there are some guys that are doing it right that have a good following. One of my favorite dudes that I follow, that I would consider kind of an influencer for me, I learned a lot from, is Aaron Snyder. And the president, now owner, part owner of Kafaru. And I think where the disconnect is and where people get sick of it is the influencers that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. There's legit influencers there's legit guys out there that and gals that know their shit. But I think we're seeing an oversaturation in the market of a lot of people that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I think a lot of people are getting sick of those. There's certain big companies, or just companies in general, that are targeting these people because they've got all these big followings, but they don't really know what the fuck they're talking about. They don't know anything about hunting. They have no business teaching people about bow hunting or how to dial in a rifle or anything like that. And I mean, that's kind of where you have to, right. And that's where, because on social media, you can be whatever the fuck you want to be. You can, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer. I mean, you see it. I mean, go on a Facebook forum or a thread, even like on a Fox News, and you'll get, 100,000 people with, all these, different jobs that they're not even qualified to talk about. And for me, that's where it gets a little sickening, because I always pose this question too. And because a lot of these influencers, they get caught doing game violations, all kinds of just stupid shit, because they have to stay relevant. They have to stay, in the game, and they're willing to even break the law to do it. And I think it's a lot of it to feed their ego. And for me personally, I always pose this question too, is that those people that are getting caught with game violations and all this other stuff, that are pretty much doing it, you've heard it, doing it for the gram, yeah. I guess you could say. Would those people still hunt? Would they still be chasing around elk on public land if the internet didn't exist? That's where I pose that question. Would you still be doing what you do if the internet didn't exist? Would you still be as passionate about hunting? Would you still be passionate about shooting, about bow hunting? Would you still be going out and shooting your bow every single day and not posting about it, because obviously the internet doesn't exist. So that's my biggest thing to where I ask people, is because I know my answer, because I was hunting before social media existed. I'd still be making gear if social media didn't exist. Of course, it'd be fucking hard for me, because how do companies these days, and how do you grow and develop? Brick and mortar's gone. It's a thing in the past. So like, social media is the thing now. So I mean, it would suck, from a business perspective, but that's where I kind of try to see through some of the bullshit, because you can see some of it. to where, you know, there's some influencers who are like, oh, you know, I'm going to compare guns here today. And then it's it's the same company with, you know, just different gear. And it's pretty blatant that, okay, I get it. You know, I get sponsorships and all that. I'm 100%, you know, we sponsor a small podcast. I get it. You know, it's just the ones that I would like to see a lot more companies stand up to a lot of these influencers that even get caught poaching. Or, you know, some of this stuff that happens, but I see a lot of it get ignored. And, you know, that's kind of where, you know, a lot more people, I think, are seeing through the bullshit. And, you know, they're stopping to think, like, does this person really know what the hell they're talking about? You know, they're giving me all this advice, but do they really know what they're talking about?
I think one of the things, Tyler, where I agree with you is I think one of the things that's gone on is Instagram has allowed a lot of people to have a lot of leeway, right? So you can post a picture. As I've said many times on this show, there's not a lot of context, right? So people can look like Zeus in a picture, you know what I mean? They can create the narrative in a picture. Now, as audio and video has come in the last couple of years, heavy, I mean really heavy. I mean, it's always been there, but now there's kind of nowhere to hide, right? Like if you're just posting pictures, it's hard to grow on Instagram, even the way the algorithm is created. So you have to be in these other spaces, whether it be YouTube or podcasts. And that's why I love podcasts, and there's nowhere to hide. You're putting all your thoughts out there. Your knowledge is going to be all out there if you do 20, 30, 40 episodes. People are going to have a good vibe on what you're about. So you can't hide. So I challenge the companies a little differently. I say this. You need to start to take responsibility first for when you sponsor someone or work with somebody. A lot of companies, and I know you know this, they'll blindly send gear. They'll blindly send money. They do no research. Almost every company I work with on this show has visited this set, has been to this set, has known me for years. I've been in the business for 12, 13 years now. So, you know, people know who I am. They know what they're getting. It's not a shocker. They come into the studio. They know I'm going to do it right. They see the things that I'm doing. So I think that there's not a lot of responsibility on the companies. They just say, oh, this is a cool lady or this is a cool dude, whatever. They have a following, kind of like you touched on. But now my thought process has shifted where I tell people, if you just have Instagram and that's all you have, it's not good enough anymore. It really isn't. Because to your point, putting your knowledge out there, putting what you can, you know, articulate, to me is more important than any photo you're going to post being like, oh, here, you know, and I'll relate it to the tactical industry. Oh, here's me in my full kit, you know, with this. That doesn't make you an operator. That doesn't make you, you know, it's dress up time. It's a costume, you know, and there's a lot of people that are actors, and that's fine, right? If somebody walked in your booth tomorrow and said, Tyler, I love your gear. I'm essentially an actor. This is what I do. You know, and I could name names. We know that there's people out there, that's what they are. They act, and they're good at it, and they do good spoofy videos and stuff like that. It's just, I think it's more, Tyler, owning what you are. If that's what you are, own it, you know?
No, I think that's the biggest thing, too, is that, and that's why I'm so real on social media. And I'll be the first one to say, people ask me hunting questions, and I'm like, hey, listen, I go out there, I put my boots on, and I go after game. But there is so many more people that are more knowledgeable on that stuff. Now, if you got gear questions, material questions, or anything, like, you know, come ask me. I can talk all day about it. But I think that's where you have to. And I've done even videos on my stories and stuff of, you know, last year I lost a buck, and you know, I try to make it a realist thing. And I think that's kind of hitting on your point. I think that's important. I think people can, you know, see through the bullshit. And that's where it gets a little sickening, because it's like, you know, and like one of my buddies said, Instagram's a highlight reel. That's all it is. It's a highlight reel. You know, for most of it, it's not reality. It's the ending of
all the fuck ups you made, all the mistakes, but you're not going to post that because, a lot of people are too much on their ego to where they don't, I don't make bad shots, or I don't take those kind of shots or anything like that. But I think for me, like you saw even on my post the other day where, taking bow shots at 80 yards at a speed goat. If anybody has ever hunted antelope, spot and stock in open terrain, you will understand that meme. But a lot of guys won't talk about it because they're like, oh, you don't take an 80-yard shot at an animal. But like I said, that's not the realistic approach. And for me, it's all about realism. And like you said before, it's, as long as you're representing who you are and you're being yourself, mad respect. But I think we get a lot of those people that have those big influential, followings, and they try to portray themselves as something that they're not. And and for me, that's where I see through that bullshit. And I'm like, hey, you've been successful with it, with that, but like, I think some of that is, you get the girls with their tits hanging out and stuff like, and that's cool. If that's your thing, that's your thing. But, don't talk about, traditional bow hunting because you probably don't know a damn thing about it. And that's where, like I said, if you take responsibility and you're like, hey, this is me, this is what I don't know, this is what I do know, I am who I am, you either fucking like me or you don't, but, you're going to get 100% real me. I think that's the most important thing. But like you said, you don't see that on Instagram a lot.
Yeah.
You don't.
It's Instagram. You're exactly right. It's the resume, right? That's what it is. It's the resume of social media. It's putting it out there to say this is the highlight of my day or my week or whatever, however often you post. And of course, if you have sarcasm, you're going to lace a lot of things in sarcasm. If you are one of those guys that preaches, a lot of fact-based stuff, you're going to lace everything in facts. But it's going to be the highlight of those particular moments in time that you're going to post. Now, you mentioned a few things in marketing. Every company, and I don't judge a company based on this, right? And I don't think you do either. Like you just brought up, some companies want to do boobs, and that's sometimes how we refer to it, or sex appeal. They want to do that stuff, and you can do it with guys just like you can do it with females. Some people want to do that stuff. They want to do, the guy all dressed up, or the bopperator, or whatever it is, and sometimes they want to do the chick stuff. I think there's a place, Tyler, for all of it, and I think deep down you do too. I think there's a place for all of it. It's what's your focus, right? Are you going to focus on that? Is that going to be what drives your page? Because if you do go the route of whether it's satire, and you and I have talked about this offline, or boobs or sex appeal, or whatever it is, you have to realize the community that you're going to build because of that. Is it going to be a customer-based community? Is it going to be a true community? I'd rather have 1,000 people. That's why I started the show page, the John Bartolo show page. If people just want to see clips and snippets from the show, I try to put everything up there about the show that affects the show. And if people want to tune in, and I'd rather have 1,000 screaming, dying fans on that page than have 50,000, that are following it because I'm posting, myself half butt naked, a chick, whoever, whatever. It doesn't matter. But I think it's about being, true to the space that you're in, and also having the ability to acknowledge that if you do those things, it's not going to maybe build the community that you want.
Exactly. I mean, and like I said, we don't have a huge following base, over 11,000 now, but that is built off of just genuine who we are as a company. And I would rather have that than 100,000, like you said before, of people that, are not going to really buy shit. And I think that's where a lot of companies, I think that's where you get lost a little bit on the social media game. Because I think a lot of people, especially companies, concentrate on that. The follower base, that doesn't equal sales. And that doesn't equal success. You've got to, and like just reiterating what you said, you'd rather have 1,000 people that are going to back you up, stand up for you, that are going to be diehard fans, that are going to be buying shit from you, than 100,000 people that aren't going to be buying shit. Because then what's the point? Like, what's the point? Especially as a company. I mean, if you're in the game of making money, it doesn't really fucking matter if you got 90,000 followers and they're not buying your shit. And like you said, there's a time and place for everything. For me personally, I don't need tits and ass to sell products. That's me personally. If you do that as a company, it's like I said, it's a free market. Do whatever the hell you want. I have every right to, I guess, criticize you just as you have every right to criticize me and how I run my business, which a lot of people do, because a lot of people are not on board with me saying fuck and everything else and just being real. So I mean, yeah, and it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to get criticized for it. You know, it doesn't matter if you do, you know, your sex appeal, or if you're just the real guy that wants to be like 100% real, working class with people. You're going to get ridiculed. As long as you stay true to who you are and you be who you are, that's all you can do. And I think when you do that, that's where you're going to find success. It's when companies, and like you've said, and even talking about products, when you start venturing and doing things that didn't make you successful in the first place, that's when you lose your identity. And I think that's when you start losing that customer base and start losing those people that were dedicated to you because of who you were in the first place.
Yeah, I think success is found in the authenticity. And I think the more authentic you are, that's gonna come out, and that's gonna be what people will respect you for, and you'll know who likes you or hates you pretty quickly. So I always say it weeds out the fakers. You know, the reality of it is, however a company decides to market themselves, and that's something I think a company figures out in its first 3 to 5 years. You know, and that's a lot of what I talk to them about. They'll say, you know, they'll start out down a path, especially a small business, and they may not know how they want to end or what they want to look like. So it takes them a little time to get there. And I think when you reach that year 3, you start to figure out a lot of things, whether it's your numbers, whether it's your growth rate, whether it's what you really want your brand identity to be, because chances are your logos, your things, unless you come in to any industry with, you know, $50 million of bankroll to set it all up a certain way, you're going to start out grassroots, and you're not going to know what C is yet. You're just trying to get through B. And that's why a lot of companies, when I start with them, I say, do what comes natural to you, and then you'll kind of figure out what direction you want to go in. And that's a little bit of a conversation like we had about, as you move forward, it's not that you're less authentic, you just kind of clean it up and figure out where all the puzzle pieces fit for what you're doing. And it might lead to spin-off things, because being humans, and we're creative. You're a creative person, whether you want to admit it or not. You know, you're a creative person, and I know sometimes for some people, when they get into soft goods and everything else, and they start sewing and everything, they start to think like, am I like in the ice capades or something? They're like, what's going on here? You know, but gear is something, when you're creative, that taps into a certain part of your brain that allows you to capture a certain artistic quality. So the artist in you starts to come out, and that's okay. And that's where you'll be able to figure out what is going to drive you to continue to get better in not just your product, in your branding and everything else. And it might lead to spin-offs or other things, like you and I talked about. A lot of your sarcasm and the stuff that you put out there could lead to another page like T&K memes or something, you know what I mean, which could be a whole nother thing all to itself, which could lead to a t-shirt line, or could lead to, you know what I'm saying? There's so many things, and that's when the creativity, as I'm saying, starts to take over. But you only get there if you're authentic, and that's what I see in you. It's just figuring out those paths,
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's there's a gray line for everything. I mean, there's some stuff that I post, but I mean, there's always that, there's things that are beneficial, that are going to make people laugh, and there's some things that are going to like truly hurt your brand. And figuring out that gray area, and especially when I'm always in the gray area, figuring that out and figuring out how to maneuver it can be tricky at times, because I am not a black and white guy, as you can probably tell from my Facebook page. I'm very, sometimes across the line, sometimes, I'm kind of in that gray area, but I think as long as you're being authentic, like you've said, I think you can't go wrong. I mean, there's things that are no-nos. There's things that, you're going to push past those gray lines. You're going to do things that people are not happy about. But as long as you're staying true to yourself, I think you're always going to have those dedicated people. But then, you get into, how am I going to grow? How am I going to expand? How am I going to make more money? and tap into different markets and things like that. So I mean, that's you know, and being a fairly new company, it's always trying to figure that out. What's the next step? You know, where should I go with this? Where should I go with that? Because we've got a good baseline now, but it's how do you expand that baseline at this point? You know.
Yeah. No, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. Yeah, I guess that's really all I had to say. I mean, it's one of those things to where, especially as a new entrepreneur or new businessman, you know, we've got pretty good cash flow for being pretty new, and you know, but it's always how do I continue to grow and expand, because you know, the more products we make, you know, the more of each product we have to make, and that just is more money. So you're always trying to figure out how to make more money. Not that I live humbly. I don't I don't pay myself very well. You know, everything goes back into the company and growing the company, which I think is the most important way to do it. You got to take care of your brand first and foremost. You don't take care of yourself. And I think that's where a lot of people start failing, is because they try to take care of themselves before they take care of the company. But yeah. It's definitely one of those things you constantly have to innovate. You constantly have to think of new ideas, new ways to target people. And then trends grow, they go away. So it's definitely interesting.
Yeah. You know,
it's 24/7.
Years 3 through 5 in a company, in terms of paying yourself and structuring what the company is going to look like in the longer term, those years become so critical. And figuring out when the time's right to start to bring in infrastructure and start to bring in more, you know, people and kind of target the right areas. That's why marketing's always been a struggle in the firearms business and in the defense business and in the hunting business, is because most of these companies are run by engineers, and engineers don't really understand marketing. They don't understand, they only say ROI. That's the only term that comes out of their mouth. What's my ROI on this? And I answer them all the same every time. Well, your ROI is zero. Zero. Stop. Get away from ROI. And they say, what do you mean? And I say, well, I'm going to clean it up for you. Do you have to create media to sell products? Yes. Unless you're making fucking toilet bowls or something. But even then, you still need some type of marketing, right? So if you determine that you need some type of marketing, do you want to hire someone that can do it as efficiently as possible? Or do you want to hire someone that can just throw some shit up there and pray? Well, I want to hire the most efficient person. Okay. Do you want to have the most creative person? Yes, I want to have the most creative person. Do you want to have a person that has certain strategic partnerships or relationships that can help your brand? Yes. Okay. Do you want to have someone that can help your brand? Okay. Yeah. All right. The answers are all yes to that. And then I say to them, well, you need a brand manager, a marketing director, and you need a photo videographer. I'm not even going to get to web or anything like that, but you just literally name 5 positions. And what companies do more often than not, Tyler, is they'll hire Susie Q or their nephew or someone else, and they'll say, run my Instagram. And they take this singular focus. And you've seen it 100 times. You're nodding your head because you've seen it 100 times. They take a singular focus. And I'll sit with companies, and this is what I'll say. First thing I'll say in a meeting, I'll say, where's your largest fan base or customer base? And they'll say, oh, Instagram, then our newsletter. Okay. Who runs your Instagram? Oh, little Billy over here, you know, he's like 19. So I'm like, you give the largest segment of your audience, your most important segment, to little Billy. Now, I might disagree with that being the most important, but it's the largest. And that's, you know, one of the things that reaches people every single day. But you have little Billy that you pay $19,000 to a year run it. There is no logic in that. That's the equivalent of saying the person that runs my best machine and makes my best product is the cheapest paid guy in the building. There's no logic to that. And that's what companies do over and over and over and over again. And then they wonder why they have no marketing plan. They have no content creation plan. They have no creativity, and they have no direction. I'm like, well, you hired a fucking 19-year-old to run your whole, your whole, it makes no, the logic makes no sense. And as soon as companies figure out that you have to create palatable media that people want to consume, on a regular basis, that's when they'll truly understand marketing. Because if you go and you look at successful companies that market, you're engaged in everything you look at. It's very consumable. I can put on Red Bull TV and literally let it play in the background the entire day. I can put on Monster TV. I can let it play in the background all day without seeing one can of soda or anything. But in our business, and I've said it over and over again, we've become so obsessed with the product being the marketing. Now, hunting's a little bit better. Because in the hunting space, as you know, people will film their hunts and they'll put stuff out there. And I think that's what makes the hunting space unique, and that's what makes it cool, is you have that embedded thing. But we've seen it time and time again, and you've seen it, where you walk by a booth and it's, you know, it's like I've said it 100 times in the show, it's like, pick up this rail, it's 0.1 lighter than the other rail, you know, and you're like, Jesus fucking Christ, you know, and that's not marketing. That's an engineer who made a baby, and he loves his baby, and he's trying to force you to carry his baby.
Yep.
It's not marketing.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I'll go to trade shows and a lot of people look at my social media and they're like, even new developing businesses, and they're like, how do you do social media? And I just, unless you've got it, you either have a skill for it or you don't. And if a company doesn't have somebody that's skillful at it, you need to hire somebody that's skillful at it, that knows what the fuck they're doing, because social media is not, especially I see it with like the older generation. It's one of those things to where you almost got to know what you're doing. You got to have a plan, and you got to go off of it and see how it goes. I mean, social media is so important these days as far as selling, because like I said previously, brick and mortar it's dead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why you're seeing a lot of these companies that are going bankrupt, that are going out of business, because look at Amazon. Amazon is just destroying everybody, because that's all it is these days. It's all online. It's all social media, and yeah, it's kind of interesting because, like you said before, you can make a freaking awesome product, but if you don't know how to market it appropriately, I mean, good luck. You know, especially in this day and age, because if you can't, I mean, one big company that is extremely been successful with their marketing is Black Rifle Coffee. I mean, that is a company that knows how to do social media, and so yeah, it's been kind of interesting, you know, seeing them kind of how they've even progressed, you know, since 2014 when they started. That kind of shows you the importance of social media. It shows you, I mean, how big it is for, you know, those videos, for pictures, for content. It's huge.
Yeah, there's a lot I could unpack there. There's so much you just brought up that I could unpack. I am going to touch on quickly the hiring process. I think a lot of this mistake made in the hiring process and why companies have gone through 2 or 3 evolutions of this, Tyler, it's simple. It's because the same person that was the problem from the beginning, the engineer, is trying to do the hiring, and they're trying to hire for something they don't understand. And I've told companies 100 times, I sit on a few hiring boards. I'll gladly sit. I don't mind listening. You know, I offer that all the time to companies, and I do it sometimes. But I think, you know, like you said, having a knack for it now, being a part of a younger, and I use air quotes, some of us do have just a natural knack for that sarcastic funniness, and, you know, and it gravitates towards people. But I think what we're witnessing is a time where advertising and certain things are coming back, like blogging's having a resurgence, advertising's having a resurgence, obviously with podcasting because of COVID. Podcasting has come in fast and furious the last, 8 months, because COVID's hit, and now everybody's looking for that space that they can still get air cover, and podcasting's grown something like 180% based on what statistics you're reading over the last few months. But that's because people are home and people are, just trying to figure out what to do with their time, to be quite honest. And they're listening to podcasts or they're watching them. And I don't think that's going to go anywhere. And it's cyclical. I mean, we've seen the magazines die. We've seen a lot of that stuff, kind of happen. In the hunting space, magazines still do exist a little bit. But talking about social media and just the growth of that space and bringing in the right people to run it, you have to start somewhere. And part of the problem in the industry is people don't want to pay for a quality person to do it. They want to get someone who's like Little Billy, and they want to pay him, 30 grand to come in and do that job, and they don't realize the customer service that's involved in it, the this that's involved in it, the that that's involved in it, and there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of great people, and you have a great person helping you. You need help doing it because there's a lot of moving parts to it, and I think some people don't fully understand that yet. You do, I know that you do, but some companies don't fully understand what is all involved. 90% of your customer service questions come in through some form of messenger format, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram, everything else. Very few people now even want calls in. I've been in buildings where they have one person as a quote unquote customer service arm, and those are huge companies. And I try to explain to people all the time, you have to bring in a capable person, somebody that can put a plan together, someone that can put a strategy together. I've asked multiple companies, Tyler, and this is the funniest thing. Like, you talk about your contempt sometimes with hunters that don't know what they're doing. I've asked companies 100 times, well, you hired this person. Did they give you a plan before you hired them? And they'll say to me, no. And I'm like, so you didn't even, when you sat down with them and you interviewed them, you didn't ask them at any point in the interview, what would be your plan if you came here? It blows my mind. It absolutely blows my fucking mind, my brother, because they do it all the time. And I'll look at them and I'm like, I'm floored. I'm like, so you paid this person, you brought them in, and you didn't. I mean, now as someone who's done that job and understands that job and has been a marketing director, am I going to give you the whole plan? No, I'm going to charge you for it. But at least a sketch, some bullet points, what you might deliver. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing too, is because a lot of companies, and then they wonder, well, why is this person, doing this? Why are they not doing that? Well, you didn't give them the outlay anyways. But the biggest thing for us, and having Hannah work with us, is that I don't micromanage her, but at the same time, I'm like, this is what I want, this is what I expect, and it's like, as long as you get those things done, like, cool. I'm not going to be I'm not going to be up your ass. Like, I'm not that type of person. But there's those expectations, and she knows what those expectations are. And I think, a lot of companies, I think they just, some of them are so big, they've got all this money, and they're just like, here you go, here you go, here you go. And then there's no really fucking plan.
20 vice presidents.
Money around, and they have no fucking clue what they're doing. And, for a smaller business like us, I kind of understand the aspect of, if I'm going to pay you this much money, this is kind of what I want, this is what I'm expecting, or, this is kind of what I want to see, because I understand social media is so important, pictures and content are so important that, I'm paying for your time to take good lifestyle pictures, up in the Idaho mountains and stuff. And a lot of companies, they don't understand that that shit takes time, it takes money to edit. Not, everything. I'm not telling you, anything you don't know. But, a lot of those things to where, I think the newer generation, I think more of us that are younger, the millennials, I guess you could say, can probably see the benefits and see the value in that type of stuff. I think the older generation doesn't get it. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah,
you're a lot of your boomers, like my dad sometimes, it's just like, I don't get this and I don't get that. I'm like, well, I don't know. He didn't grow up during the age of the internet. He grew up during brick and mortar. So he doesn't, he's still, his mindset is still on customers walking in the door. My mind is fucking connecting with guys in Australia, which we ship a lot of gear to, like things like that. That's where my mind is expanding and growing online, to where his is still kind of stuck on the, I would love to shake everybody's hand that, purchases gear from us, but that's not the reality these days, to where it's not, like I said, it's not the mom and pa. We're still the mom and pa atmosphere, but it's not coming in, buying shit. You know what I mean? It's just, it's not that anymore.
You want to have that blend of authentic gratefulness, which I think is what your dad's getting after, like that blend of being authentic.
Yeah.
And what he has to realize is, a lot of that's going to be through connecting with your dealers, connecting with some of your customers, and you can still do that. That's where the customer service element and a lot of the social media becomes so important, by just thanking people, having some of those canned responses, being able to be like, we appreciate you, you know, and every now and then I see you post that, and being able to maybe even pick up the phone and call some of your good customers that have spent $250, $300, $400 and say, thank you for your business. You know, we just want to extend a 10% off to you. You spent some good money with us this year. I've said that to companies, Tyler, small companies. They go, what's one thing you think we can do better, John? And I'll say, I'll look at their buying experience, I'll look at a lot of things, and I'll ask a simple question. I'll say, you know, I'll pick on your company. I would say, Tyler, you know, how many of your customers would you say $500 is a good customer? And you might say, yes. Okay, $500 through the course of a year is a good customer. Is someone you want to covet, right? Like, you want to do more for that customer because you want them to spend $1,000, right? That's always the goal. And as a good company, you want them to do a little bit more. What if you could pull a list of that and call all of them and say, hey, we just want to offer you 10% off your next purchase?
Yeah.
Imagine that now. Let me flip it on you. If that was you getting that call from a company, you'd hang that phone up and you'd be like, wow, that was fucking cool. Even if you want to buy nothing, just to get a call like that is a cool phone call. And how hard is that to do as a small company? It's not hard at all.
No, it's not. It's not hard at all. And it's actually pretty interesting because, you know, I mean, speaking of that, because my dad, he'll, you know, he replies to all the emails. People put like notes on their orders and stuff, so he's always constantly replying to them. He'll throw T-shirts and hats and decals, you know, just free shit here and there. And I think those little things
go a long way.
You know, they go a long way. I mean, even a T-shirt, you think, oh, you know, it's just a T. But if I get a free T-shirt from a company when I order,
you wear it.
Even a $400 order, and I get a free T-shirt, like, I'm like, that's fucking cool, man. Like, they didn't have to do that. They went out of their way. You know, they're taking a hit on it, whether you think they are or not. You know, they're taking a little bit of hit out of that, just show their appreciation. It's something small, but it's things like that I think are important for big businesses. I mean, or small businesses and big businesses. I think the bigger you get, some companies forget who their customer is. They forget who those people were that have been through, you know, everything. And, you know, even you're talking about those win backs. We do win back emails where we do 10, 15% off. And I think that's important to show your appreciation, or even go on social media. And you'll see me sometimes where I make a big post that just says, thank you.
Yeah. I've seen it.
You know what I mean?
That's why I bring it up. I mean, that customer experience. You know. And look, to Dad, I would say this. Like, I'd say, like, you know, if you're feeling froggy, pull a list of everybody that spent, you know, a good chunk of money in the last 3 months and write them a handwritten card. Drop it in the mail with a little, like you said, like 10% off, a personalized 10% off. Or drop them a call. Hey, we got all their numbers. Why don't you sit here and just call them and thank them? And that's something like the older generation loves, and that's a feel-good day, right? Like, nothing about that day goes bad because you're calling people and saying, hey, we appreciate your business. By the way, I have a code. It's friend10, you know, for your next purchase. We're just giving it to you verbally, you know, to do whatever you want with. You know, it's an active code. It's good for the next 30 days. You know, pass it on.
Those are the type of things, and like I said, that's going to build your company and super important. And, you know, the bigger you get, sometimes it's, you know, for some companies, it can be hard to do that because you start getting so delved into that stuff. But you're spot on as far as showing your appreciation, being still that family-owned small business. It doesn't matter how big you get, still doing those things and going out of your way to show your appreciation, I think, is so important. And, you know, coming from a working class background, like, you know, me and my dad, you know, my dad didn't grow up with a lot of money. He had failed businesses. And that's something that he enjoys doing. And even people that come into the shop, and he'll sit there and talk to him for like an hour. And, you know, he stops what he's doing. You know, he stops shipping. He stops all this other stuff like we do. And we sit there and talk to people because those are the people that pay your bills at the end of the day. And, you know, I'll never lose sight of that because no matter how well we do, you know, and we're in the up and up every single month. We're growing and growing and growing. But you can't ever lose sight of that because those people you know, it's so important because every time you come out with a new product, those are the same people that are coming in and buying it too. So, I mean, that's one of those things that, you make a good point on that. And I think a lot of small businesses don't take the time to do that. Or just even, people will send me a message and they say, I got this piece of gear in the mail and I'll like it. And I'll say, appreciate it, man. Let me know if you have any issues, and I appreciate you. I don't have, of course, all day to, type novels.
No.
But just a quick, because how many times have you sent a message to a company? I know I have, where I don't get a response at all.
Every day. I'm dealing with one right now. Message. Every day. Yeah,
they don't even fucking look at it. And how unimportant does that make you feel?
Oh.
Like, you didn't even like it. You didn't even. Sometimes I'll plug my competitors. I plug my competitors, dude. I do that because I run competitors' gear, and I'm one of those guys. I'm like, you know what? The industry's big enough. There's enough room for us to make fucking enough money. Why not plug each other and benefit off of that? It makes fucking sense to me, because I make shit that you don't make. You make shit that I don't make. Why not have the best of both worlds?
Well, the problem is, I don't have to tell you, you get that resentfulness that some people get, and it spoils the water. But yeah, I mean, the funny thing is about, the older generation, there is such a place for them in so many ways. I laugh because I think back to Rich Angstead at Angstead Arms, and I'm going to tell a personal story. Richie and I have been friends a long time. He makes a great, subcompact 9. We have one here, subgun. And a pistol. Sorry, he makes a 9mm pistol. I'm laughing inside as I tell this story because it's a personal story, and I don't think Richie will mind. But he would have his father-in-law walking around the booth, and he's older, of course, the gray hair, everything, just walking around. And I'm like, Rich, who's that? Is that like, is that the guy that like financed the whole thing? Like, I'm thinking like, that's the, and he goes, nah, it's my father-in-law. I just have him walk around so people think like, there's some gray hair around, like there's an older guy here, and just like you said, just to like shake the hands and talk to people. And he has them hang out at the booth to satisfy that older generation. You know what I mean? It's kind of like paying the toll. But like you said, we're always pedal to the gas, being younger, we're pedal to the gas. Those guys will take the time to sit and talk to someone, and exactly the meetings I'm talking about that you put them in. You just sit them down and go spend 2 hours talking to this guy. But like, they love that stuff, and it's that personal touch that goes a long way. But as a leader, you just have to, it's plugging in the right players in the right situation. But he's like, nah, I just have my father-in-law walk around. Like, he's like, it's his gray hair, I put a polo on him, and he just, I just tell people like, he's like the guy, like he makes it all happen. Like, and they love that. It adds a certain amount of what I call gray hair to the conversation. You know what I mean? You need that sometimes, because people don't sometimes take us seriously.
Well, yeah, and I think that's important. My dad, he just ordered actually a hearing aid because he's like, I finally had to order one because we had a customer come in the store and he go, huh? Like, just like 100,000 times. Yeah. And I can imagine this customer was just getting fucking pissed off. Like,
God love
what is your bino harness made out of? Like,
sorry, Dad, we love you.
We love him. And like, what dad, at 70 years old, and it's so crazy because he like appreciates the smallest things. And we've got this big industrial dumpster right in the back of the shop, big fucking industrial dumpster, obviously putting a bunch of shit in there every day. And he took a picture with this dumpster, and he's like, I've been waiting my whole life to have my own business and have my own big dumpster. And it's just fucking, my mindset's like, what the fuck? What are you talking? Like,
to him, you made it. You made it.
But to him, he's like, and he even sat me down. He's like, thank you for. I never thought I was gonna have my own big dumpster. And like for that, it's like. Dude's almost 7 years old, and he just like he finds accomplishments and success in the weirdest shit. But I look at it, and sometimes I have to slow down myself, and I look, and I'm like, this is pretty fucking cool, man. Yeah. This is pretty fucking cool to have like our own big shop, and doing the amount of money per month that we're doing. It's just because sometimes you lose focus of that. Guys like us, the younger guys, because we're always
pedal to the metal,
yeah. And sometimes it's never good enough. We got to make more. Like, this month, we're on track to doing over $40,000 in gear sales this month. But you know what? For me, I'm like, oh yeah, cool. I want to do 50 next month. I want to do 60 the next. You know, like, and for him, you know, sometimes I have to, you know, bring myself back down and just kind of, you know, sometimes you have to be in the moment and just be like, this is fucking cool, man.
Yeah.
This is fucking cool.
Being present,
you know.
I mean, you know, and if I could, you know, impart anything, being present and being in the moment, and I've talked about this on other podcasts, is really something our generation has to do a better job of, you know, and just realizing, reflecting, right? Like, we don't take a lot of time to sit back. Like, podcasts are a great way to do that. Like, we're doing that now. So you feel good when you're done. You're like, you know, I just said some shit I felt like saying. Like, Dad, go listen to that. And you get that stuff out there. It's almost like therapy. And I know you know something about that. You know, it's you have to have those therapeutic moments where you just kind of get your thoughts out there and just kind of reflect and think and look back. And building, you know, a successful brand and a successful company on any level, you know, everybody has a different definition of what success is. You know, I get to come in an office and turn a microphone on. Nobody's going to tell me I'm not successful. Like, that's like, you know, I don't, it's not a lot of heavy lifting. I enjoy what I do. It doesn't consume me. It doesn't own me. And it's fun. And I like being able to work with the brands I want to work with and choose my spots. And to me, the freedom is the success. And that's what I love, is the freedom. For some people, it's a dollar amount, right? Like, if I do $1 million a year, Tyler, we made it. If we do $3 million a year, it's a money amount. For me, it's a freedom amount. I have a jar and I want it empty. I want it empty. Some people say they want it full. I want it empty. I don't want any to-do slips. I don't want any, you know, I just want, like, you know, I kind of get to do what I want. My day is my own, and I get to piece it out the way I want to. It doesn't mean I'm not busy. It doesn't mean stuff doesn't pop up, but the freedom is what I chase. And when you find what you are after and you're able to build around it and still make a healthy enough income, because we all have to make money, that's when you find the happiness. Like, your dad is happy. You have a dumpster. You know, if we could all just be happy with that, the world would be such a better place. You know, if we could be happy with the little things,
it would be.
You know, it's amazing.
I mean, and you know, hearing them things, and you know, just to reiterate kind of what you said, hearing them even things like that, it makes you be a little bit more present in the situation of where you're at, and be more thankful, because, you know, no amount of money is gonna make me satisfied. I think at the end of the day, what really satisfies me is seeing those hunting pictures, you know, you know, success pictures with our gear, and you know, and like you said, you know, being my own boss, like, it's awesome. You know, just the other day, I'm like, you know, I'm gonna go antelope hunting today. Yeah. And, you know, and I didn't have to fucking talk to anybody. I didn't have to take a day out.
Permission.
Tell, you know, my dad and, you know, the people who work for us, and be like, hey, you know, I'm taking the day off. I need the day off. And it's just like, yeah, go. And they're, you know, they're shipping orders out and stuff like that. And, you know, for me, I think just sitting there out there even hunting, and I just go, you know, this is great. I don't have to live in a big house or anything. Like, you know, none of that shit matters at the end of the day. Like you just said, having just the freedom to kind of do stuff that you enjoy, that you love, that gives you healing, that's good enough for me, man. And I think I need to do a better job myself of being present in that, and understanding that it's the small things like that, you know, we need to be more appreciative of. And, you know, great example of that is looking at our older generation, because, you know, my dad grew up with not a lot. You know, my grandfather, you know, fought in World War II. He shot raccoons and ate them during the 30s, man. You know, and those are the people that truly, I think, our generation, we're so used to fucking, you know, me, you know, fucking make money, and we don't just sit and appreciate that, like, you know,
it's not that bad, right? It's not
that bad, man. It is not that bad at all. And but I mean, we you know, going back to the ego and Instagram and stuff, we just, it's always kind of, how do I one up? And sometimes, you know, you got to humble yourself, and you know, you have to realize that, you know, there's a lot of things that are important to life than just you and like you said, there's a lot of people's definition of success. What's your definition of success? And I think once you figure out what your definition of success are, you're going to be successful.
And you got to build a model around it. Listen, man, this is amazing. We can go on for hours.
Oh yeah.
It's been an hour and a half, so we're gonna have to do it again. We got to get you out here to Vegas. We're gonna have to do this in studio. I had a rad time talking to you. I knew that I would. Sure, I knew that I would, and I appreciate you. Let everybody know where they can find you, how they can support your company, and shout out all the links and everything.
Yeah. So our website's tandkhunting.com. That's just TENDK hunting.com. We're always innovating, coming out with new products. We've got social media. We've got Facebook. We've got Instagram. Like I've warned people, if you're get offended easily, you're probably not going to follow us for very long. But if you have a little bit of a sense of humor, which I'm guessing if you listen to this podcast, you probably do, you can follow us on there. And we're always coming out with new products. And if you guys got ideas and stuff like that, stuff that you want to see, we're always up to build that stuff. But I appreciate you having me on. It's been a good time. And
man, listen, I appreciate you taking the time to do it. And I knew we would knock it out of the park, and I knew it would be an awesome conversation. You're a fantastic dude. I think, the essence of the brand and the things that you're trying to do, it's going to be a lot of fun watching it play out for you. And I'm super excited, and, I'm always a phone call away to chew the fat. So, I appreciate you. I appreciate the brand. I'm going to put the links down below, T&K Hunting. Go check him out. I love some of the stuff he's putting out there. I think he needs his own separate meme page, but that's a conversation for another time. Because I think there's a T-shirt business or something in there, like a hunting spoof page. I think there's a whole nother business there.
I'm still thinking about a meme page. Mm-hmm. I think there might be too, and I'm gonna definitely. I might just make a meme page after this. I'll try it out. I'll take some of your advice.
I think that there's a T&K memes T-shirt brand in there somewhere that would be funny for hunters to wear, especially like if you're doing it for the gram on the hunt, you ain't doing it right, something like that. I don't know, but there's something. I think you agree. I think there's something there. But I appreciate you. I want to thank all
there's something there.
No, yeah, I want to thank you for taking the time. I want to thank the sponsors. I want to thank everybody. I appreciate you guys. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com. Go check it out. All the sponsors: Gallotech, Rhino Metals, Blackwater Ammunition, Galco Leather, and of course Full Quartz and Firearms. Go check all of them out. The links are all down below. Support them. Support everybody. Special thanks to Microtech and Kuyu as well. Get the shirt on. And, of course, T&K Hunting for today. I appreciate Tyler taking the time. It's been a fucking awesome conversation. It's going to be everywhere podcasts are heard. And leave reviews. Need reviews. I do a terrible job asking for them. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everyone listening.